You're not doing this to feel better about yourself, are you? Those words slipped from Robyn's mouth like a quiet warning. But behind them was something darker: suspicion, fear, maybe even jealousy. And from the look on her face, you could tell. This wasn't about just an apology tour. This was about control, power, and a relationship cracking in places so deep, neither of them had the courage to look. Her question didn't land like a lighthearted concern. It hit like an accusation. From the woman who spent years calling herself the glue in the family, now suddenly afraid that an old door might be reopening. For Kody, but not for her. Everything about this so-called apology tour felt off from the moment it was announced. TLC promoted it with full force. Graphics, episode teases, the works. But what stuck in everyone's throat wasn't that Kody was apologizing. It was why. The word sorry barely left his lips. It wasn't real remorse. It was damage control, plain and simple. It wasn't about healing the family. It was about cleaning up his image. And Robyn saw it, probably before anyone else did. But instead of encouraging this healing moment, Robyn hesitated. And when she was told Kody would be meeting with Christine, Janelle, and Meri, without her, something in her shifted. Her posture changed. Her voice dipped a little lower, and her words, sharp, calculated, cloaked in concern. You could almost see the flickers of panic in her eyes. Not because Kody was trying to make peace with the past, but because he was stepping outside the rules she'd built their marriage on. The rules that kept his heart focused only on her. And you have to ask, why would someone who claims to want healing be so uncomfortable with her husband making amends? Because what Robyn saw wasn't closure. What she feared was reconnection. Or maybe even a spark that never truly died with the other wives. That's when it hit viewers. This wasn't love anymore. This was fear disguised as devotion. Loyalty twisted into control. That kind of marriage doesn't just break overnight. It decays over time from the inside. And this is where the story turned. Behind the glittering TLC promos, the man on a mission to atone narrative was the real story the cameras almost missed. A couple so tangled in their own insecurities and emotional history that even a basic conversation turned into a negotiation. The tension wasn't just about past wives, it was about trust. The kind that can't survive if one person believes the other might go back to someone less controlled. Robyn didn't ask Kody to be careful. She asked him if he was doing it for himself, so she wouldn't have to say the next part out loud. Or are you doing it for them? Kody didn't answer that honestly. He never does. It's hard to watch two people who once called themselves soulmates second-guess every word the other says. But this is what it looks like when a marriage builds itself on exclusivity instead of honesty. Remember, Robyn used to be the favorite, the untouchable, the fix. She was the one who was supposed to do it right. Not only did the other wives see her that way, so did she. But now, she looks over her shoulder. And that fear, it's not about the other women winning Kody back. It's about her losing the only security she's built everything around. And let's not forget, the wives Kody now seeks out for his so-called apologies, they've moved on. Christine is remarried. Janelle is free and focused on her independence. Meri has checked out emotionally. None of them are looking to return. But Robyn's fear isn't based on logic. It's based on knowing how quickly attention shifts in their world. She's watched Kody chase Christine in the past. She's seen his envy at Janelle's independence. And maybe she knows, deep down, that a man built on ego might still be chasing acceptance from the people who walked away from him. That's the real unraveling here. Because when love turns into a leash, it stops being love at all. Kody's apology tour, it isn't a journey to heal, it's a scripted campaign to soothe public perception. And Robyn doesn't want to lose control of the narrative. Not to Christine, not to Janelle, not to Meri, not even to the truth. But what she doesn't see is that the control she holds so tightly to, is exactly what's breaking them. And this wasn't just a little storm in their marriage. This was the tremor before the collapse. And what happens next might change everything. When someone says they're going on an apology tour, you expect tears. You expect accountability. You expect a raw, uncomfortable reckoning with the truth. But what happens when the only thing behind the word apologize is silence, ego, and a camera lens? That's exactly what viewers were confronted with when TLC began teasing Kody Brown's so-called apology tour. Posters, schedules, labeled episodes. It wasn't subtle. Each week was branded after a different wife: Christine's week, Janelle's week, Meri's week. Viewers were supposed to feel like something profound was about to happen, but instead, they were handed a walking performance. A well-rehearsed show. One man rehearsing his lines, and three women who already wrote the final page of the book and closed it a long time ago. From the outside, it looked like healing. But if you watched closely, it felt like damage control. Not for the family, for the network. Kody didn't set out on this journey to say, "I'm sorry for the way I hurt you." He never really said those words at all. What he did say, what he kept repeating, was that he was apologizing without ever admitting to the pain. Not the betrayal, not the manipulation, not the nights of silence. Just apologizing. There's a reason that caught so many people off guard. Because saying you're sorry isn't the same thing as feeling sorry. When Mykelti talked about this on her Patreon, it wasn't bitter. It wasn't dramatic. It was honest, quiet, sharply real. She said what so many have been thinking but didn't want to believe. That this wasn't about closure for the family. This was about making Kody feel better about himself. Making himself the victim of the consequences that came after his own decisions. She even broke it down in a way that made it painfully clear. When kids fight and a parent tells them, "Go say you're sorry," they do it. But not because they understand why they need to. They do it because the parent told them to. It's surface-level behavior that checks the box. That's what she compared her father's tour to, a forced, performative gesture. And no one is buying the act anymore. It's not enough to pose next to a Christine label on an episode graphic. Not when the relationship disintegrated on screen in front of everyone. Not when the moments were filled with yelling, blame-shifting, and emotional abandonment. Should we forget the time Kody asked for loyalty from Christine without giving her love in return? Or the afternoons when Janelle cried in confessional, saying she didn't know who her husband was anymore, and now, because TLC sees the dropped pieces of this family as ratings potential, they squeeze them into a frame again and try to call it healing? You can't fix something that's already burned out. You can't wrap up damage with neat little bows labeled apology. That's the thing about accountability. Real accountability is uncomfortable. It's messy. It requires sitting face to face with people you hurt and saying, "I was wrong," not "they misunderstood me," not "I did what I had to do," not "they twisted my words," but a gentle, unwavering, "I failed you." Kody never said that, not once. And in his silence, he spoke volumes. This whole tour felt like a script meant to distract from the emotional wreckage underneath. And for a brief moment, those watching started to wonder, who is this tour really for? Is it the wives, the kids, the viewers? Or is it Kody himself trying to erase his reflection on screen by layering it with good intentions? Because the truth is, this family isn't standing in front of him begging for apologies. They've moved on. Christine is happily remarried. Janelle is reimagining peace in solitude. Meri is no longer waiting for someone who never saw her. There is no audience for his apology tour because the people he's trying to impress stopped watching a long time ago. And that's what makes this even more sad than it is infuriating. Because deep down, this wasn't about making things right. It was about making things look right. And everyone saw the difference. When a man has to ask for permission to speak to the mothers of his children, something's broken. And in this case, it's not just a relationship. It's the entire family system built on the illusion of unity, shattered by the one thing that was never supposed to exist in a plural marriage: ownership. Kody didn't just inform Robyn about the apology tour. He had to run it by her. Like a child asking a teacher if he's allowed to go to recess, because heaven forbid he step outside their emotional contract without checking in first. MELTDOWN confirmed it. She said that Kody had to sit down with Robyn and ask permission to apologize to his ex-wives. Not consult her, not share concerns, ask. And that right there, it changes everything. The man who once bragged about leading a faith-based plural family, the one who claimed to honor and love all his wives equally, is now bound by invisible chains held tightly in Robyn's grip. The same man who used to say that love should be multiplied, not divided, now divides his every move according to what one woman approves of. And what exactly is Robyn approving here? Let's make this clear. We're not talking about Kody secretly meeting ex-lovers behind her back. These are three women who raised his children, supported and submitted through years of chaos, and gave decades of their lives to his vision. And now he needs clearance to speak to them? That isn't love. That isn't respect. That's a system ruled by insecurity, fear, and control masked as marital loyalty. When Kody explained the situation, he tried to soften it. He framed it as being respectful to Robyn, but it didn't sound like respect. It sounded like surveillance. It sounded like boundaries built out of distrust, not love. Like Robyn held the keys, not only to their home, but to every interaction beyond it. And here's the thing that stings even more for viewers who followed this saga for over a decade. Kody never asked permission from Meri to marry Janelle. He didn't seek Janelle's approval before marrying Christine. He didn't hesitate when bringing Robyn into the family either. But now, after 3 wives have walked away, he pauses. Not out of guilt or reflection. He pauses for Robyn. Ask anyone who watched those early seasons. The control wasn't this obvious. Sure, there were cracks. But now? The cracks have become canyons. And Robyn, once seen as the outsider who just wanted a place in the family, is now the authority figure, silently approving or denying emotional contact with the very people who were the family. It's not about bitterness. It's about how power shifted. This family was supposed to be built on sisterhood, spiritual balance, open connection. But what's left is a man micromanaged by conditional trust and a woman who operates from fear. Fear of losing him, fear of emotional competition, fear of the past repeating itself. And the irony? The tighter she tries to hold him in place, the further he drifts from everyone else who once mattered. And the damage isn't just between husband and wives. It ripples through the children. How do you maintain healthy co-parenting when one person has to ask another for permission to communicate? How do you explain to grown children that their father didn't visit because he wasn't allowed to? It undercuts every fragile bridge that's already been built to reestablish trust after years of abandonment. The apology tour should have been about healing. But how can healing happen in isolation? Kody didn't go into this with independent clarity. He brought Robyn's fear in with him, fear dressed up as protection, insecurity wrapped in concern. And that moment, that subtle admission that he needed Robyn's go-ahead, stripped away the last illusion of healthy autonomy. The man who used to stand as the spiritual head of a family is now operating inside a single-wired household, run by conditions instead of love. And with each apology session approved not by conscience, but by a partner monitoring every move, the family fractures just a little bit more. Because when a marriage takes priority over parenthood, over accountability, over honesty, what's left to respect? When MELTDOWN found out that her father had been in North Carolina, just hours away from her, and didn't even call, not even a text, it wasn't anger that came first. It was hurt. That kind of quiet, aching disappointment you feel when you start to realize someone you used to look up to isn't showing up anymore. She said it herself, clearly and calmly. If she'd been near Arizona or Utah or wherever he lived, she would have told him. She would have made an effort so he could at least see her kids, just for a moment. But he didn't do the same, and that's when the pain settled in. This isn't just about a father missing dinner or forgetting a birthday. It's about emotional abandonment that now lives in growing silence. When the kids feel like they're an afterthought to their own dad, memories start to rot at the edges. Love, no matter how deep it once ran, changes when it's not protected. For Mykelti, hearing that her dad was so close but still chose not to see her brought up a larger, unspoken issue that's been unraveling in this family for years. Kody's distance isn't driven by misunderstandings or regret. It's by pride, by a warped idea of loyalty, and by something else that nobody wanted to dare say for a while: influence. It always comes back to Robyn, to how conversations have to be cleared, to how emotional exchanges with his children seem to be weighed against her approval. This isn't fiction. This has been voiced more than once, including by Christine. There's a suspicion that interactions with his adult kids, especially the ones connected to his ex-wives, are being viewed not through the lens of fatherhood, but through the lens of marital insecurity. And that's where the damage deepens. How can a child reach for a parent who is consumed with managing the comfort of someone else? How do daughters like Mykelti explain to their children why grandpa doesn't stop by? What do Janelle's boys think when they text him and receive silence in return? Kids grow up fast. But abandonment makes them grow up even faster. When Kody made the decision to emotionally retreat from his older children, he didn't do it loudly. He didn't slam doors. He didn't yell. He just disappeared. And what makes the absence harder to accept is how present he is with Robyn's kids. The double standard is blinding. The attention, the gifts, the affection, all publicly shown, all tightly guarded. And it starts to build this narrative for the other children that they simply don't matter the same way. This isn't about bitterness or favoritism anymore. It's about what happens when a father chooses selective love based on where the permission lies. Controlling love doesn't just damage the partner, it poisons every connection outside of it. Kody's walls might have been built to protect his marriage, but those same walls have shut his kids out completely. And the price of that? It's trust, loss of respect, distance that turns into disconnection. The kind of emotional wound that time alone doesn't heal, especially when it's accompanied by silence. Maybe Kody thinks that staying away is better, cleaner, easier than facing the long, hard reckoning those conversations would bring. But Mykelti's words made it so painfully clear. Those kids don't want a perfect father. They just want their father to try. So when fans ask, why don't his kids call him? Maybe the harder question is, why should they be the ones doing the chasing? In a family where emotional access has been restricted, filtered, and made conditional, it's not just relationships that suffer. It's identity. It's that fading thread between who you thought someone was and who they finally showed you they became. Every missed visit becomes more than a scheduling conflict. It becomes a question mark that lives in your chest. And for these kids, growing up under the weight of public scrutiny and private disappointment, that's a burden no child should carry. When a woman feels threatened by her husband spending time with women he used to be married to, that's one thing. But when those women also happen to be the mothers of his children, co-parents with decades of history together, it shifts into something deeper, more unsettling, and honestly, more destructive. During a conversation around Kody's so-called apology tour, Mykelti said something that pulled the curtain back on this bizarre new dynamic. She explained that Robyn needed to be informed, maybe even had to approve, every time Kody planned to meet one of his ex-wives. Not because they shared parenting responsibilities, Not because there needed to be logistical planning, but because of what felt like territorial fear. And more than fear, it felt like jealousy. And that's where the tension explodes. There was a moment when Robyn apparently framed Kody meeting privately with his ex-wives as meetings with people he'd been in sexual relationships with. That detail, that language, matters because it changes the entire tone of his attempt to reconcile. It strips away the history, the co-parenting, the shared trauma and love, and reduces it to nothing more than old intimacy. As if the very fact that he once shared a bed with Christine or Janelle makes them a danger now. But what exactly is Robyn afraid of? That Kody will fall back in love with the women who left him? That he'll suddenly realize his heartbreak led him to the wrong conclusion? Does she not trust him? Or does she simply not trust that his attention won't wander? Even now, after all the others have moved on, she grips to the idea that any interaction must be sanctioned. It's control masked as concern. And Kody, instead of pushing back, has accepted those rules. It begs the question, are Christine, Janelle, and Meri still treated as threats in Robyn's eyes because of past romantic intimacy? Or is it deeper than that? Maybe they're threats to the narrative Robyn worked so hard to build. The devout wife, the healer, the moral compass. The one Kody didn't just choose last, but in the end, chose over everyone else. And if that's the case, the fear of Kody sitting down with those women isn't about love. It's about the danger of being exposed, of being challenged, of watching a man who once ignored their pain start to see what he lost. But here's what makes this whole thing painfully absurd. These women aren't just pieces of Kody's romantic past. They are tied to him permanently through children, through lives built, birthdays celebrated, tragedies survived, and love. Whether he remembers it or not, the idea that he needs to tread lightly with them, like they're trying to seduce him back into their lives, is not only insulting but completely out of touch with reality. Christine is happily remarried. Janelle, though single, has never once expressed regret about leaving him. Meri, emotionally disconnected, made it clear long ago that the man she once loved no longer exists. No one is circling back. Yet Robyn seems to believe that even their presence, off camera or on, could undo what's left of her supposed monogamous marriage. This mindset has a consequence far bigger than awkward tension. It has rewritten how Kody approaches fatherhood. If each conversation with an ex-wife is viewed through Robyn's lens of jealousy or control, then how is he supposed to co-parent freely, or discuss a child's needs, or show up at graduation, or offer to fly in when someone's sick? He can't. Not without double-checking that it won't upset the balance back at home. That's not parenting. That's performance. And in that performance, the kids, many now grown adults, have become collateral damage in a relationship that's built its foundation on fear instead of trust. The emotional peak of all this isn't in the accusations or the approval checks. It's in the fact that Kody, a man once surrounded by 4 women and 17 children, now finds himself paralyzed between the past he's fleeing from and the present that's caging him in. Because a marriage that sees threats around every corner stops being a marriage and starts becoming a war with no winners. A comment from a fan with a background in psychology and anthropology started circulating online after the latest episodes aired. It didn't go viral with noise or memes. It went viral because it hit something raw. She didn't call anyone names. She didn't shout. She calmly pointed out what many had tiptoed around for years: the personality patterns we've watched unfold, especially in Robyn and Kody. Look eerily familiar to anyone who studied human behavior through a scientific, emotional, and clinical lens. What stuck with people wasn't that she used the word narcissism. It was how she explained what it looks like when a person lacks a deep sense of self, when they build everything around how they're perceived, when everything they do is motivated not by guilt or connection or even love, but preservation of image. And as she laid it out step by step, viewers started replaying moments from the show in their heads, making connections they hadn't dared make before. She explained that people with narcissistic tendencies don't form solid identities. They adapt, copy, shift according to who they're around and what reactions they get. That's when the moments started flooding back. Robyn mimicking language that the other wives used years earlier, Kody shape-shifting between being the sweet husband to Robyn and the stone-faced authoritarian to Janelle or Meri. The emotional inconsistency wasn't just a breakdown, it was choreography, performance, constantly adjusted based on who was in the room. Then she went deeper. She said narcissists avoid true accountability because to them, admitting fault is like declaring war on their entire identity. That was when the apology tour stopped feeling uncomfortable and started feeling dangerous. Because Kody never said, "I was wrong." He said, "I apologize," which is safer, softer, controlled. It leaves enough space to retreat from blame while still appearing as if you're taking a moral high road. And that's the key. They want to be seen as moral, not be moral. And with every episode, that need for moral correction feels so manufactured. Apologies rehearsed, reunions forced, empathy performed. Kody sits across the table from the women he emotionally abandoned and offers words that sound scripted, clean, rehearsed. But none of it lands, not for them and not for us. And Robyn, she doesn't soften this. She tightens it. Behind closed doors, she feeds Kody the narrative that shapes his reactions. She casts herself as misunderstood, as the wife who sacrificed the most. She repeats again and again that all she ever wanted was to be loved by the family. But in episode after episode, the way she clutches her position, the way she inserts herself into stories that were never hers, starts feeling less like sadness and more like obsession with status. The fan called it emotional martyrdom, the subtle performance of pain to gain loyalty, pity, or insulation from criticism. And if you go back, those patterns show. Robyn crying when Christine mentions being unhappy, Robyn saying she's the real scapegoat, Robyn reminding everyone that she never signed up for this chaos, even though she entered knowing what was at stake. And through it all, the thread remains: deflection. Always shifting focus away from their choices to how those choices were misunderstood. These aren't internet diagnoses. They're observations from people who've been watching, not just as fans, but as students of psychology, viewers slowly realizing that what they're seeing might not be just a breakup or a storyline, but a blueprint of control. Emotional control that appears soft and victimized, but at its core, denies others their lived reality and twists it into personal persecution. So when fans say this isn't just a bad marriage, what they mean is, it's a study in manipulation, in image obsession, in the silence that happens when someone turns their pain into a tool instead of a truth. And that realization didn't come through explosive fights or slam-the-door exits. It came through the quiet refusal to say one very simple thing: I was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry. That's the part that never arrived. Because in the mirror world, these two have crafted. Being wrong would mean collapsing the entire performance they built for more than a decade. And for people like that, collapse is never an option. Control always is. From the outside, it looked like love. Two people leaning on each other while everything around them fell apart. Robyn brought tissues, Kody brought validation, they wept, complained, and clung to each other while the plural marriage slowly died in flames. But if you watch closely, not from the edited lens of nostalgia or public sympathy, but with the eyes of someone who's seen the full story, you realize it wasn't healing. It was survival. And what they built in the ashes of the other marriages wasn't a new beginning. It was a mirror held up between two people who needed to be seen, but never questioned. Kody and Robyn became each other's echo chamber, each reinforcing the other's fears, frustrations, and interpretations of what the rest of the family had become. And that's where the damage took root. Every time the other wives raised concerns about emotional neglect, favoritism, or being left out, Kody didn't reflect on his choices. He looked to Robyn. Her reaction became his compass. Her discomfort was his truth. Her silence was his permission. One of the clearest moments came during the early seasons, right after Robyn had joined the family. While Christine was in labor, Robyn tearfully offered to let Kody go to be by her side. It was framed as selfless, sacrificial love. But over time, this moment aged differently. Because what followed wasn't unity. It was emotional migration. Kody didn't just support Robyn more in the months after. For the first time, his physical presence, everything from where he stayed to how he divided time, slowly shifted. It wasn't deliberate at first. It was quiet, subtle. But with time, his marriage with Robyn became home base, and the other relationships became visits. And Robyn didn't complain. In fact, she flourished in it. Her gentle pleading turned into protective boundaries. Her desire to be included evolved into expectations to be prioritized. And Kody, a man increasingly at odds with his other wives and children, found comfort in the one relationship where no one challenged him. That's how mirroring works. Robyn mirrored Kody's anger when Christine betrayed the family. Kody mirrored Robyn's frustration anytime someone expressed independence. Together, they shaped a new narrative. They weren't the problem. The others were. The disloyal ones. The ungrateful ones. The dramatic ones. And inside that airtight bubble, accountability died. By season 16, the shift was complete. Kody referred to Robyn and her kids as his family, implicitly separating them from everyone else. He no longer visited the others regularly. He questioned their loyalty, their choices, and even their worth within the family, all while sitting beside Robyn, who sadly nodded along, often crying about how much pain the other wives caused her, without acknowledging the role she had played in pushing them away. Christine saw it first, that she was no longer in a marriage, but orbiting one. Janelle followed. Meri had already been sidelined emotionally for years. And the reason none of them seemed to matter to Kody anymore wasn't just about conflict. It was about comfort. Robyn made Kody feel untouchable, and he returned the favor. There's a strange kind of power that forms when two people agree not to challenge each other. It can look like unity. It can look like support. But over time, it creates a relationship that can't regulate itself. Robyn doesn't check Kody because she benefits from his version of the truth. Kody doesn't check Robyn because her emotional dependency validates his sense of control. And perhaps that's why their marriage, though intact, doesn't feel stable. It feels insulated, fragile, built not on accountability, compromise, or growth, but mutual protection, a shield, against criticism, against consequence, against reality. The other marriages broke under the weight of neglect, silence, and emotional starvation. And what rose in their place wasn't a partnership rooted in love. It was a bond wrapped in fear that found comfort in rejection of everyone else. In the ruins of what used to be a family, Kody and Robyn built something all right. But it wasn't stronger. It was quieter, smaller, easier to manage, less threatening. A relationship built with ashes and mirrors, not because it was honest, but because it was the only reflection they both still believed. One of the most gut-wrenching truths to emerge from the most recent seasons isn't just about the marriages collapsing. It's about the children being left behind in the fallout, and not just by circumstance, by choice. Kody didn't just lose touch with one or two of his kids. He withdrew from entire branches of his family tree. He stopped calling. He stopped visiting. He started disappearing, one small silence at a time, until all that was left was distance, covered in stalled phone calls, missed birthdays, and resentful holiday tables with empty chairs. You want to believe that a father, no matter how messy the relationships get with the mothers, always makes space for his children. But for Kody, that space virtually vanished. And the most painful part? There was never a clear explanation. Just vague comments about blame, attitude, strained relationships, none of which justified the complete emotional abandonment. In one of the most revealing moments on the show, Gabriel, Janelle's son, sat in silence, his voice cracking as he recalled the moment he realized his father didn't remember his birthday. Kody had called that day, but not to celebrate, not to ask how he was doing. It was only about COVID. That conversation haunted more than just Gabriel. It haunted everyone watching. When a father starts treating relationships like transactions, valuing the ones that affirm him, and discarding the ones that challenge him, you start to see the emotional system collapse. And that's what happened here. Kody praised the obedience of Robyn's children, held them close, protected that part of his life like it was untouched by chaos. But the rest? He distanced himself, even from the children who only asked for honesty, for care, for presence. And it's not enough to say it was about conflict. Many of these kids weren't part of the marital fallout. Many simply wanted their father, but Kody became unreachable. He stayed in the home where he felt control. And by staying there, he made it clear where his priority lived. Robyn rarely stepped into the frame of accountability with this. She often cried. She often spoke of pain. She often repeated how she wanted the family whole. But rarely did she speak out when Kody ignored the children. There was no visible effort to bridge that gap. If anything, she echoed Kody's blame. She softly supported the idea that the estranged relationship stemmed from disrespect toward their marriage or anger from the wives. But when you've got sons breaking on camera, daughters speaking of silence, and grown adults admitting they no longer recognize their father, the issue is not just about adult drama. The pain runs deeper. Kody's power doesn't come from being loved. It comes from being obeyed. And when the children refuse to play along, when they ask hard questions or show disappointment, he shuts down. He said it out loud, that he can't maintain respect for people who don't respect him. But children aren't soldiers. They don't owe blind loyalty. And it's not their role to preserve a father's pride before their own emotional safety. What we've seen over and over is the same pattern. Relationships, whether with wives or children, are only maintained when they create comfort. And when they don't, they're cut off, dismissed, minimized. That transactional behavior may explain why so many of his kids, once joyful and open in early seasons, now barely appear. And when they do, their eyes carry a different weight. Kody didn't walk away from his kids in a single moment. He did it by degrees, by staying too long where it was easy, by avoiding the hard conversations, by prioritizing a single household as the last vestige of power he had left. And Robyn didn't stop him. Whether by silence or soft encouragement, the result is the same. A father who only reaches for the children who pose no threat, speak no resistance, and require no accountability. And that's not parenting. That's protection of ego at the expense of connection. And the echoes of that choice will last far longer than any reality show season ever could. There's something unmistakably hollow about watching someone say sorry on camera while treating the apology like a checklist. That's what this apology tour has started to look like. An overly lit, emotionally flat, carefully produced storyline pushed by a network desperate to hang on to a family that's already walked in different directions. It's not healing, it's not closure, it's performance, and it's not convincing the people it's supposed to reach. You could feel the awkwardness in every room where Kody showed up with that distant expression and that rehearsed line about reconciling. Christine didn't flinch. Her face said it all. The woman who once waited years for scraps of love didn't need his forgiveness now. She didn't need his accountability either. She had moved beyond the point where his words could mean anything at all. Her new life isn't shaped by Kody's absence. It's made better by it. And her smiles in those scenes, post-divorce, aren't bitter. They're free. Then there's Janelle. She didn't cry, she didn't yell. She just sat with that now familiar look of quiet disbelief. She'd heard all the explanations before, the spin, the half apologies, the narratives filtered through Robyn's echo chamber. Kody's version of accountability felt shallow to her because she could see through it. It wasn't that he was finally understanding things, it's that he was checking off names. One wife, then another, and the emotional investment? Nowhere to be found. Even Meri, who spent seasons fighting for even the tiniest connection, vacillating between anger, love, and numb acceptance, wasn't buying any of it. You can almost see her eyes glazing over during their conversations. She'd grown weary long before this apology tour got underway. Years of unresolved tension, betrayal, and empty promises drained her of whatever belief she once had that Kody meant what he said. So, when he sat across from her with his forced sincerity, she smiled politely. But everything in her tone screamed, "Too late." And it wasn't just the wives reacting this way. Anyone who has paid close attention to how TLC has handled recent seasons knows that this reconciliation arc isn't rooted in honest growth. It's an attempt to salvage what's left of the story. With the wives scattered, the marriages broken, and fans losing interest in watching separate lives with no interaction, the producers needed something to force them back into the same space. That's not healing. That's narrative direction. It's painfully easy to spot when a show forces its cast into rooms they'd already emotionally walked out of. None of the interactions feel spontaneous. Everyone knows ahead of time what's supposed to happen. Kody arrives. Emotions spill, mild ones. The ones safe for air, maybe a tear, maybe a confession. Then he apologizes. But it's not real vulnerability. It's a way to shift public perception, to soften his image, to rewrite the final chapters of the story, so he doesn't look like the villain he portrayed himself to be time and time again. The kicker is, none of the wives asked for this. Christine never asked him to circle back. Janelle was clear. She wanted space, not sentiment. Meri didn't ask for another conversation in front of a camera. The reconciliation wasn't requested. It was scheduled. And that's what makes this so difficult to watch. Because reconciliation, when it's real, is clumsy and raw and private. It's not a perfectly timed scene with a call sheet and lighting. True forgiveness isn't built for the viewer. It's built slowly, with honesty, with pauses, with presence. And Kody's presence during these moments has consistently felt flat, disconnected, and performative. The wives didn't move on because they were bitter. They moved on because they had to protect what was left of themselves. And now, they're being pulled back into a story curated not for their healing, but for ratings. They're strong enough to speak their thoughts, but the subtext is clear from each expression, each half-hearted handshake, each side eye. This isn't about making peace. It's about maintaining interest. And if anything, these scenes have done the opposite of what TLC hoped. They haven't made the audience feel hopeful. They've made viewers feel sad, because it's now painfully obvious. The family we all watched grow and shift across the years no longer exists in any real form. What remains are people who survived their roles and are now being asked to act them out one more time, for closure they already found elsewhere. Robyn sat alone on the couch, tears sliding down her cheeks, her voice catching as she whispered that she never wanted this, that she didn't sign up for a broken family, that all she ever wanted was sisterhood, unity, love. But by the time those words hit the air, they rang hollow, like someone mourning a loss long after they helped cause it. Because whatever she thought they were building, whatever image she held in her mind when she married into the Brown family, was gone, not melted or faded, imploded. And Kody, he wasn't crying, he wasn't reflective, he wasn't even angry in the way people expected. He was bitter, defensive, lashing out, not at what happened, but at being left behind. His frustration wasn't about regret, it was about rejection, about no longer being able to control the direction the ship sailed. And in that unraveling, something became permanently clear. This man, who once stood proud as the patriarch of a sprawling plural family, is now the head of nothing but fragments, pieces that won't fit back together. No matter how many times the cameras show up or how often TLC writes the next reunion's agenda, what once was bound by spiritual belief has been stripped down to two people in a monogamous marriage surrounded by ghosts. And it's not just the other wives who faded. It's the very idea that this family ever worked at all. Robyn's isolation isn't something that happened to her. It's something that was shaped by every subtle choice, every whispered concern she let Kody act on, every permission she quietly denied through silence. Her world once felt like victory. Now, it looks like a cage. As for Kody, he still tries to lead, still speaks with the tone of a man in charge, but no one's listening. There's no Meri still trying to earn his love, no Janelle playing peacekeeper, no Christine waiting for him to change. And the kids? The ones who grew up under his roof calling him dad? They've drifted too. Not out of rebellion, out of resignation, because there's only so many times you can be looked through instead of looked at before you stop trying to be seen. This isn't just about a love lost, it's about the dream failing. The dream of plural marriage, not as a religious ideal, but as a functional, loving home. The crash didn't come all at once. It came slowly, painfully, through careless words, withheld affection, calculated loyalty. And now, the foundation is dust. What hurts most isn't that it failed. It's that it was never really equal to begin with. The wives saw it. The audience saw it. And somewhere deep down, even Robyn knew. Kody could never balance love among 4 women equally. He didn't have the emotional range, or the humility, or the accountability. When things got hard, he chose comfort over conflict, validation over listening, control over connection. And that's why he's here, stranded in a marriage that looks more like a PR campaign than a partnership. Because the truth about reconciliation is this: it only starts when someone says, "I was wrong." Not because it saves face, but because it admits guilt. We never saw Kody do that. Not once with real emotion. Not once without hedging or blaming or circling back to someone else's perceived disrespect. True apology means taking off the armor, sitting in the discomfort, and not needing the other person to smile or nod or forgive. It means being okay with the silence afterwards. It means meaning it, even when the cameras stop rolling. And that's what we've never seen. What this entire tour has carefully avoided showing. Because surface makes for easy TV, but accountability, that's raw, that's painful, that's real. And maybe that's why this story, after more than a decade, ends the way it does. Not with a wedding, not with a reunion, not with redemption, but with an audience finally understanding what the wives had already learned long ago. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes faith can't fix it. And sometimes walking away isn't the end. It's the first honest move in years. Now that the show has brought us to this place, this clear breaking point, the question lingers like tension in the air. What would a real apology look like from Kody? No cameras, no producers, no plot, just truth. And do you think he's ever been ready to give one? Tell me in the comments, because this family may be broken, but the truth, that's still worth saying.